Lincoln had hoped that he could accomplish something worthy so that he would be remembered after he died. It was that hope that had powered him through his dismal childhood, his string of political failures, and the darkest days of the war, that his story would be told. It will be told for generations to come.
Abraham Lincoln may be the most revered president of all time. He came around at a time when America was, as Barack Obama put it, not fully formed. The Declaration was signed, but the country was split. It needed a leader to help bring it back together again. He became a man of the people, going directly to them to try to unify them. It was a difficult and draining job. The Civil War was the bloodiest in America's history. It was enough to give anyone nightmares. Keep watching to learn about the strange dream Abraham Lincoln had right before he was killed. The Assassination Plot. Abraham Lincoln gave various well-known speeches throughout his presidency, most notably the Gettysburg Address. He also delivered a final speech after the Confederacy's surrender. Not everyone was glad that day. His eventual assassin, John Wilkes Booth, said it would be the last speech he'd ever make. Everyone's heard the story of Lincoln's death, but there's a lot of scheming and plotting to get to that point that they may not know about. Abe's last day was one of his happiest. He went on a carriage ride with his wife and finally felt the nation could recover. Did he have misgivings about going to the theater that day? Even if he did, he couldn't disappoint the people. Historians note that
it had been in the newspaper that morning that he would be at the theater that night, and now he had to keep his word to the people who might come to the theater thinking that he would be there.
Everyone knows what happens from there. It's arguably the most famous story involving theater attendance of all time. As historians describe the event,
they arrive at the theater a little bit late, they stop the play, there's an applause. The play, which is this light comedy, goes on. Booth sneaks up to the steps. He opens up the door. And that's the end of the Lincoln story.
What everyone doesn't know is that it was only the first step in a major plot to end the Union. The Civil War was over, but the Confederates refused to go quietly. The idea was to kill the president, Vice President Andrew Johnson, and Secretary of State William Seward. It would have disrupted the chain of government in the Union so much, it may have never been able to recover. Several conspirators died or were hanged, including John Wilkes Booth, David Harold, George Asterod, Lewis Powell, Mary Surratt. Michael O'Laughlin received a sentence of life in prison. Samuel Arnold and Dr. Samuel Mudd also got the same sentence but were pardoned by President Andrew Jackson. Edmund Spangler helped John Wilkes Booth at the theater during the assassination and got 6 years in prison. John Surratt fled America and became a fugitive. He was tried in Egypt in 1886 but not convicted. The idea of a conspiracy to topple an entire government was one of the boldest and strangest plots in American history. It isn't even the strangest part of the story. What happened before is even more shocking. Lincoln's interest in dreams. Abraham Lincoln wasn't involved in the occult or making predictions. He believed that dreams were a natural phenomenon. He was also a Christian who thought that any extraordinary visions were the work of God or his angels. That may be why he thought that, while not always prophetic or important, they could have meaning. He noticed how often dreams seemed to appear in the Good Book. He said, quote, "It is strange how much there is in the Bible about dreams. If we believe the Bible, we must accept the fact that in the old days God and his angels came to men in their sleep and made themselves known by dreams. This religious connection may be part of why he always had an interest in dreams. He had more than one that he considered at least somewhat prophetic. One piece of evidence comes in a letter Abe sent to Mary in 1863. She was away with their 10-year-old son, Tad. He wrote that Mary should, quote, put Tad's pistol away because he had an ugly dream about him. Members of his cabinet also allegedly remembered him telling them the story of a strange dream on the morning of his assassination. He said he was rapidly sailing on an unknown body of water. It was apparently a repetitive dream, one he'd had during nearly every important event of the Civil War. An even stranger and more prophetic dream came earlier before the assassination. The strange dream. Ward Hill Layman was Abe's former law partner. He was also his friend and even occasionally served as his bodyguard. He told an extraordinary story about a strange dream. He said the story was relayed to him on April 14, 1865, days before the assassination. Mary and Ward were the only other people there. Abe said he had a horrible dream while staying up late. Lincoln apparently even tried to find an explanation for the strange dream in the best way he could. He reportedly opened his Bible to a random page, hoping it would find an answer. It was Genesis 28, the story of Jacob's ladder, one of the most famous dream-related stories in the Bible. He continued reading throughout the Bible and noted that he seemed to, quote, encounter a dream or vision wherever he looked. It made the dream feel increasingly prophetic. It also began to take possession of him more and more. What happened in the dream? As he described it,
there seemed to be a death-like stillness about me. Then I heard subdued sobs, as if a number of people were weeping. I went from room to room. No living person was in sight. I kept on until I arrived at the east room, which I entered.
Then, suddenly, he found a covered corpse, but couldn't tell who it was. Abe asked one of them who had died, and he said, the president. He was killed by an assassin. Abe awoke after a burst of grief from the crowd in his dream. He couldn't sleep at all that night and was strangely annoyed by it ever since. Once he told his tale, he said it was only a dream and they should forget about it. That turned out to be impossible for everyone involved. Abe couldn't fully forget about it because he reportedly told the tale to Ward again with a slightly different turn. The second time, he said it was actually George Washington whom he found dead. Political scientist Dwight G. Anderson said Lincoln saw the first president as a father figure whom he felt he emulated. Abe had a sense of guilt about how he'd run the country. He was anxious about whether it could recover and become the kind of nation he dreamed it would be. Did it really happen? The account of Lincoln's dream is primarily found in a book that Ward wrote. It was full of memories of his time with the president. Some of them were already published in newspapers. Others were from personal letters and an unpublished manuscript. The full book was published by his daughter 2 years after his death in 1895. Ward says he tried to tell the story of Abe's dream, quote, as nearly in his own words as I can. It became one of the better-known stories of the president's life and death. That hasn't kept historians from doubting the account. Ward's book wasn't published until 20 years after Abe's assassination. If both he and Mary heard the story of the dream, it's a bit odd they didn't mention it immediately or at least soon after the assassination. No one else whom they relate it to told the tale either. Wouldn't such a seemingly prophetic dream have been one of the first things on their lips after the shock of an assassination? Historians Don E. and Virginia Fennerbacher also note inconsistencies in the story of the dream. They could be the ramblings of a tired president or proof that the dream story never happened. For one, the timeline doesn't match up. He told his audience the dream occurred the other night and about 10 days ago, so which one is true? The location doesn't match up either. Abe said he was staying up in the White House, quote, waiting for important dispatches from the front before he fell asleep and began to dream. He was already on the front from March 24th to April 9, the time when the dream supposedly happened. These inconsistencies haven't prevented the tale of the dream from showing up in history books throughout the ages. Don and Virginia note it had been quoted as fact by various respected authors. This backs up the tale and suggests Ward may be telling the truth about what he heard. It's impossible to know for sure what Abe was dreaming about in the time before he died. Many sleepers wake up forgetting what they dreamed about the next day. This makes keeping a story of a dream from hundreds of years ago a tall order. Now it's time to hear from you. What's the strangest dream you've ever had? Let us know in the comments section below.